Hey everyone, this is Mr. Stamkos and welcome to this video. And today I will be talking about the top 10 free agent signings of the 2020 offseason. Now, it's been a pretty big offseason, some big names moving around like, Pietrangelo, Markstrom, Holtby, Torey Krug, Henrik Lundqvist left New York. But out of all those guys, what one are going to make the biggest impact on their team? This is all personal opinion. This isn't, factual or anything. You could have a different list than me, but don't go hating on me for my list. But anyways, let's hop into it with the honorable mentions, and I got 4 or 6 here, whatever way you want to look at it. I got Cam Talbot from the Minnesota Wild. I think after trading Dubnyk away, Cam Talbot is a really solid replacement. Play him and Stalock together. And I think that's a good goalie duo there in Minnesota moving forward for the next year or so. Thomas Greiss going to the Detroit Red Wings is an honorable mention as well. I think that Detroit got a really, really good goaltender, even though he's 34 years of age. I think that Thomas Greiss will really prove himself in a starter role in Detroit because he's kind of been stuck behind guys in New York, such as Robin Lehner and Semyon Varlamov. And before that, it was Yaroslav Halak. So a big break for Greiss going to Detroit to get a starter role because I think Bernier's not going to be a starter ahead of Greiss. And I also have Justin Schultz going to the Washington Capitals. Solid move there just to bolster that defense there in Washington, maybe give them a little bit more shutdown ability, two-way ability as well in Justin Schultz. And then I have Florida's entire offseason replacing Dadonov with guys like Verhaeghe and Wenberg, and also bring in Gudas for the defensive core. Just, I think, really solid offseason by Florida. And I think all 3 of those guys are really good for them. But let's hop into it now with the 10th biggest free agent signing of the 2020 offseason. I think it's TJ Brodie for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, TJ Brodie is a guy who came from Calgary. He had a pretty decent year last year for the Flames, even though they had a disappointing first-round upset to the Stars. You have to look at the bright side. The Stars are the team that made it to the Stanley Cup final and pushed Tampa to 6 games. So if you're thinking of things, if Calgary beats Dallas in that Game 7, then they could have potentially made it to the Stanley Cup final. So just look at it that way, Flames fans. And for TJ Brodie, I think this is a really good signing for Toronto. Maybe overpaid him a bit because he's being paid like $5 million. But he brings a good two-way game to the table. He's a guy who can get 35 points a year and, plays solid defense, which is something the Leafs really need. But I think this is going to be an impactful signing for the Leafs moving forward into next season. And, I hope that he does well for them. Moving into number 9 now, we got Tyler Toffoli of the Montreal Canadiens. And Toffoli is a guy who had a really good start to his career with the Kings, and near the later parts of his career with LA, he kind of fell down a little bit, moved to Vancouver, and really just exploded. And moving to Montreal, for the Canadiens fans, they're definitely hoping he can have that same level of explosiveness with Montreal that he had in Vancouver. And if he does, this could be a huge signing for Montreal. Recently trading away Max Domi for Josh Anderson, and then you add Toffoli as well to that team as a potential first or second line winger. He's a guy who could easily get 50 to 60 points for the Canadiens this year. But I think that Montreal could definitely challenge for a playoff spot with their offseason this year, and Toffoli is a big part of that. So that's why he's 9. Moving on to number 8, we got Henrik Lundqvist for the Washington Capitals, and losing Braden Holtby, I don't know if Washington really wanted to go full-time with Ilya Samsonov, so that's why I think this is a perfect signing for Washington. Getting Lundqvist, who's a veteran of the NHL, can really teach Samsonov quite a bit, even with just a year being around the kid. He's 23, drafted in the first round of 2015. And Lundqvist was a pick back in, I think, 2000. So he's been in the league for 20 years, and you know he's been around a lot of players. He's been in that spot at one point in time, and I think just his mentorship for Samsonov will be so great. Along with Lundqvist being behind a pretty good regular season team, he'll probably put up some good numbers. But just the leadership qualities is so valuable, I think, in this spot, and that's what gets him the number 8 spot. Moving on to number 7 now for the Ottawa Senators, we got Evgeny Dadonov, and this one is a little bit tricky because I don't think Dadonov will really push Ottawa to the next level, but I think moving down the line 2 or 3 years, Dadonov will be a guy who will probably be in the top 9 role at that spot, who will just be a really valuable top 9 scorer. A guy who could probably get 40 points in that top 9 role. Now, I think he'll probably be on that first line for Ottawa. Might fetch himself 50 to 60 points, but he's a proven scorer in the NHL with Florida. Who knows? There's been lots of situations where a player moves to a new team and they struggle. And it could happen for Dadonov, but if he continues the same type of play he had in Florida, he'll easily be a huge signing for the Senators. He'll definitely move him up the standings a spot or so. Just really working on the depth in Ottawa, and I think it's a really good signing for them. Moving on to number 6, this one may be a bit low for some people, but I think that it's not as significant as these top 5 signings. Number 6, I got Torey Krug to the St. Louis Blues, and after losing Pietrangelo, you were expecting St. Louis to go after one of the top defensemen in the free agency, whether it be Barrie, whether it be Krug, whether it be Brodie, Tanev. It was going to be one of those guys, or even 2 of those guys they were going after. And they ended up getting the next best thing, I think, in Torey Krug, a really great offensive defenseman. He does have a little bit of struggles with his defensive game, which Pietrangelo doesn't have. Pietrangelo is just a solid 2-way defenseman, but Krug on an explosive St. Louis offense, I think can easily get 60 points this year for them. I wouldn't say a replacement for Pietrangelo because I think Pietrangelo is a better defenseman, but Torey Krug is definitely the next best thing that they were going to get. They signed him to a pretty decent deal. I think it was just under $7 million, so that's not horrible for Torey Krug compared to the $9 million that Alex Pietrangelo was going to get. I don't know how much Pietrangelo got, but probably somewhere in the 8s or something. But yeah, just a really great move by St. Louis, really pursuing that top level defenseman, and Torey Krug definitely being a guy who could put them right back in that playoff situation. I was going into the free agency saying if St. Louis doesn't make a move to get at least a decent defenseman, I think that they may be a bottom tier playoff team, if even making the playoffs. So really happy for them that they got this guy, because I'm not a St. Louis hater. But yeah, let's move into the top 5 now, and number 5 is Tyson Barrie for the Edmonton Oilers. And Edmonton struggling with blue line support, struggling as well with blue line scoring support and just scoring depth. I think Tyson Barrie adds all of that. Just a solid number, 2 or 3 defenseman. He was a number 1 in Colorado. He was a huge offensive dynamo in Colorado, great on the power play. He took a step back in Toronto, but in Edmonton, playing with McDavid and Draisaitl, Yamamoto, Nugent Hopkins, I think he can really, re-embrace that offensive talent he has. He could potentially be as good as he was in Colorado, fetching 50 to 60 points a year, being a great power play scorer, and also, not the greatest defender in the world, but if you're getting that kind of offense from a blue liner, I don't think it matters, and he's just a really solid defenseman to add to the lineup. So I think Edmonton made an absolutely amazing move here, signing Tyson Barrie, and we'll see how he is there moving forward. But moving on to number 4, we got Braden Holtby for the Vancouver Canucks, and losing Jacob Markstrom left a not huge gap with Thatcher Demko there, but a pretty sizable one, as Markstrom finished 4th in Vezina voting in 2019-20. So you got basically the 4th best goalie in the league. Who are you going to replace him with? A former Vezina winner, a former top 3 goalie in the league, probably still a top 15 goalie in the league, maybe top 10, but I think that would be pushing it a little bit. But Braden Holtby has a pretty good team ahead of him. Sure, Vancouver lost a lot of blue line this year, just like Winnipeg last year, but they got young guys coming up like Olli Juolevi and whatever his name is, Nikita Trimkin. They also got him. They got Quinn Hughes. I think they'll be fine on that back end. But Braden Holtby, if he can, produce similar numbers like he did in Washington throughout like 2016, 17, 17, 18, I think that this could be a huge signing for Vancouver. Potentially getting a top 10 goalie in the league in place of Markstrom, I think, is amazing. They got him on a pretty okay deal, not a great one, but not the worst thing. And I think that this is a great replacement, and that's why it's so high. Just the star power that Holtby brings to the table. And just, I can't say enough about the signing, so I'm going to move on now to the third best signing, and that is Taylor Hall to the Buffalo Sabres. Now, Jack Eichel has needed a legitimate number one winger for a while now, ever since he was drafted. Sam Reinhart's a great number two option on the wing. Not going to doubt that, a 60-point scorer, really solid overall player. But Taylor Hall brings that number one table for Jack Eichel. And just imagine next year if Taylor Hall is at his best, if he's like Jeff Skinner with his 40-goal season. If Taylor Hall can be the all-star player we know him to be in Buffalo, then him, Eichel, and Reinhart next year are going to be deadly. And I think Buffalo next year could easily challenge for a playoff spot just because of the signing. It adds so much depth to their lineup. I mean, they don't have to play. I mean, they even got Eric Stahl in the offseason, so a great number two center, which is another thing they needed. So they really filled out a lot of needs this season. I think Kevin Adams had a great offseason for the Sabres, and I'm pretty excited to see what they do in this next upcoming season. But Taylor Hall and Jack Eichel, don't be surprised if Jack Eichel breaks the 100-point barrier this year. Not this year, but next season in a full 82-game schedule, because I think Taylor Hall could be that good for Eichel. Now we're moving on to number two. And, this top three for me could go in any order, but I got Jacob Markstrom going to the Calgary Flames. David Rittich, good goalie, made the All-Star team last season, I believe it was. But, Calgary, the thing with them is they really need that big number one guy in net. David Rittich's a solid enough starter to get you by in the regular season. But when it comes to the playoffs, it's really the top goalies that shine. You saw that with Vasilevsky. You saw that with Semyon Varlamov, who I think is a very underrated goalie. Tuukka Rask left Boston, so you're not going to count him, and Winnipeg didn't even make the playoffs, with horrible defense. But, yeah, Jacob Markstrom for Calgary. They really disappointed a lot of people last year, and I feel like a lot of that was mainly because they let in too many goals. And with a guy like Jacob Markstrom on the back end, I think that could be fixed big time. You could play David Rittich as a backup, or you could look to trade him, get some value back for him. But if you keep Rittich around, him and Markstrom as a 1-2 combo is so great. You have one of those guys in the playoff have a bad game. Let's say Markstrom lets in 5 goals a game. You go to David Rittich, a fresh, able-bodied starting goaltender, and he can put up a good game for you. He can steal a couple games here and there. It's such an impactful signing for Calgary, and I think it'll put them on that next level. I think they could compete with Vegas for a number one spot in the Pacific right now. I'm going to say they get second, but they could compete. And that brings us to the number one signing of the 2020 offseason, and I think this one's pretty obvious. Vegas got themselves a legit number one defender. No hate on Shea Theodore. I love Shea Theodore. I think he's super underrated, but he's not really that big number one guy that does it all. Like a big leader, great offensive guy, great defensive guy. Alex Pietrangelo brings everything Shea Theodore does. Shea Theodore is an able-bodied two-way guy who can put up 50 points a year, but I think not Shea Theodore, I think Alex Pietrangelo is that, but +1. Alex Pietrangelo is just overall better than Theodore. You put him and Theodore on a line together, and who knows, Shea Theodore could be a top 10 Norris voting defenseman this year. Like, he could get 60 points. He could be good defensively. Like, Shea Theodore is so good. But Alex Pietrangelo to that team, I will be making a video about Vegas soon. And I think that video will be titled along the lines of something like, is Vegas the favorite to win the Stanley Cup this year? Mainly because of this move, bringing in just the best free agent this class. It's a huge move for them, and I was shocked to see it. I was honestly amazed. And they lost Nate Schmidt, but who cares about Nate Schmidt to Vancouver, who I forgot to mention earlier when you got Alex Pietrangelo. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for sitting here and watching this video. I really appreciate it. And you know what? We've been doing really great recently on the old channel, you know. Just thank you for all the support. I'm going to try to keep making good, you know, content. Well, it might not be good content, but, you know, good stuff like this that I enjoy making. Because before, you know, I kind of just made what was on the schedule. I didn't really enjoy making the videos, which is, again, why I took a break. But thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one. But for now, bye.